Today, we expect to see another nationwide day of action against the Trump administration. The grassroots 50-51 movement has hundreds of events planned across the country, an effort to push back against what the movement calls executive overreach. Now, the name 50-51 means 50 protests, 50 states, one movement. There will be rallies, nature cleanups, and food drives as well. Today's protests build on the momentum of the hands-off protests from 2 weeks ago. That was the largest single-day nationwide protest against Trump's second term so far. More, please.
More, please.
More, please. So, I love folks, Simone, just saying, okay, the political class, they ain't working for us. The Supreme Court, all the federal courts are a thin line, not a strong line of defense. We the people is where all this is going to matter, I think.
The people have always had the power.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't feel that way, but the people have always had the power. The Washington Post, I read all the things Eric Wimple writes. And he wrote this on Friday. You heard the resistance was dead. You've been reading too much. Outside of the vibes realm, however, there's an outbreak of data that appends the picture of a limp Trump resistance. In a March 19 analysis in Waging Nonviolence, Erica Chenoweth, Jeremy Pressman, and Soha Hammam reported that this movement is alive and generating heat. In February, for example, the group counted more than 2,085 protests supporting federal workers, LGBTQ+ rights, Palestinian self-determination, etc., versus 937 in February 2017. I do think that the protests matter.
Right.
They are giving people an opportunity to gather. And outrage is, I mean, if this week is any example, the outrage that people expressed about the willful lawlessness and ignoring of the Supreme Court and the orders to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Senator Van Hollen going down to El Salvador,
putting a face
the press
on all
conferences.
of that, right.
Yes, it made a difference. That's how he got a meeting. But let's remind people what you've been saying about what Donald Trump and the Trump administration would love to happen with these protests.
That's it. I mean, look, the reality of it is, I love the protests. I love the fact people hit the streets, but be careful, be smart.
And joining me now is our friend, Vanity Fair special correspondent and host of the Fast Politics podcast, Molly Jong-Fast. Good to see you, Molly. So, how effective can these protests be? Does the administration care about what their constituents are saying? Because they told Republican lawmakers, hey, stop holding town halls when voters started getting angry about actions that have been taken by the administration. Or are these protests just meant to fire up opposition to take action?
Protests are super meaningful and important. And in fact, I've interviewed all these different academics on my podcast. And whenever you talk to them, they actually say, this is a game of inches, not feet, right? This is everything matters. And actually, we already see this pushback. We already see these protests are actually getting some. We see the White House understands, and they see that this isn't popular. And I think that between this and the polling and just, that moment in that town hall when Grassley was talking to a constituent and constituent was saying, like, bring back that guy, that was very meaningful because it showed that these stories are breaking through to red states, to constituents who might otherwise be okay with some of the things that Trump wants to do.
Yeah, in fact, in addition to that Grassley constituent, Democrats have seized on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's imprisonment to highlight Trump's disregard for the courts and due process. The administration claims his case is about illegal immigration and gang violence, despite no evidence that Garcia committed any crimes. Is the administration maintaining focus on this, Molly, to avoid talking about the plummeting stock market or gutting federal research programs, neither of which are popular? And Democrats, are they taking the bait?
So this is a real question. We saw Governor Newsom talk about this idea that maybe you couldn't hold several ideas at once. I actually think he's wrong. I actually think the polling on this is bad. People don't like anyone being disappeared in the middle of the night. The Supreme Court, you were just doing a segment on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that people have the right to due process no matter what their immigration status is. That is meaningful, especially from this very conservative court that overturned Roe. So I do think that it's worth realizing that actually this is really a big deal and that voters can see that both they don't like this administration disappearing people in the middle of the night. And they also don't like the tariffs. And in fact, I think they're able to hold multiple ideas in their head at the same time.
So alarms are being raised, suggesting the emergency is here, that if the administration can get away with deporting Garcia and shaking down universities, that it is the end of due process for everyone. Even the New York Times' measured columnist, David Brooks, is calling for a national civic uprising to confront Trump's authoritarianism. If the country is in a crisis, Molly, are Democrat leaders, are they prepared to meet this moment? I mean, what can they actually accomplish with only limited power right now in Washington?
So it's a really good point. And actually, there's a very smart academic called Thomas Zimmer from Georgetown who was actually writing about this today. Right? How is it meaningful? And I think a really good example is Van Hollen, Senator Van Hollen he's a Maryland senator. He went down to visit his constituent Garcia, who was in Elcott. And what happened with this was not so much that he could rescue him. It was more that he, drew attention to it, which is a big deal, even if you are in power, that being able to get the public focus on something is a big deal. And then also he was able to speak to him, make sure he was okay, and sort of his actions showed that none of this is all right. And you'll see, right, the polling right now for Democrats, the Democrats who are doing things like Cory Booker and AOC and Bernie Sanders, and now I'm sure you'll see this with Van Hollen, their polling is going through the roof. Their small dollar donation numbers are humongous. And that's not because of whether or not they're left or center left or far left. That's because they are team fight versus team cave. And we saw really Governor Pritzker talk about this idea. People want their electeds, especially Democrats, to stand up for norms and institutions. And that was what Senator Van Hollen did. I think it's really important. I think it's meaningful, and it's the only way we're going to be able to protect our norms and institutions.
So Republicans, they are reportedly contemplating the once on. You also made a stop at the 50-51 protest in your area. So talk about the vibe there. What was it like, and what was the dialogue like between you and your constituents?
I'm doing about a town hall every single week right now, or more when I can. And I'm doing them in my district that elected me as a progressive Democrat, but also in Republican districts across Texas and across America. And I think it's so important for Democrats to be out there talking to everyone right now, because the fight isn't just between progressive and moderate or left versus right. It should be a fight of everyone versus the billionaire class. And what I'm hearing from more conservative constituents, folks that may or may not have voted for me in the first place, to go and talk to those folks, and they know that they don't win when Elon Musk is firing veterans and funneling contracts to himself. They know that only the billionaires win when Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security are on the line, all to pay for a billionaire tax cut. So this is a real moment where we can go and talk to everyone and build a broader Democratic Party tent where we can include folks in rural Texas and suburban Colorado, where I'm headed to, where there are independents and conservatives and disaffected voters who need to be hearing from us right now, while Republicans are refusing to even hold town halls in their own districts.
In 2026. So first off, when do you expect Musk to leave? And then will Democrats lose a potent symbol in next year's midterms, or will Musk's actions still be a target for Democrats?
Look, if the Democrats and people across the country are able to fire Elon Musk in the coming days, it will be our greatest achievement of the Trump administration so far. We will have gotten the richest man in the world, who gave over $250 million to buy an American president and is literally funneling money to himself, our taxpayer money to himself. If we get him out of government, that is a huge win, and it'll put wind under the sails of progressives and Democrats as we head into the elections. And we can still talk about, and should still talk about, what Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg and other billionaires have been doing to corrupt our government and our economy. Look, about 8 years ago, when Democrats and people came together all across the country to save the Affordable Care Act, we saved it. And that was a good thing for the country, but it was also a good thing in those upcoming elections.
Was there ever a concern or information relayed that Elon Musk wanted to stay longer than the time allotted to him as a special government employee?
I mean, look, Elon Musk and Donald Trump don't follow the law because they want to. They seem to only follow the law when they absolutely have to. Musk is funneling money to himself already. I mean, look, the other day, the news media, and I'm thankful to MSNBC and other outlets for exposing that they were trying to funnel another $400 million contract to Tesla while Elon Musk is basically running the White House. They're trying to have SpaceX take over the Golden Dome project. This is the new Department of Defense contract that could be hundreds of billions of dollars. Of the 180 companies competing, suddenly it looks like Elon Musk is a front runner there. They're going to keep on using their corrupt influence in our government unless we tell them they got to go. And on May 30th, it is technically illegal for Elon Musk to remain in his role a single day longer. And so over the coming 40 days or so, we've got to be saying out there in the streets, at marches and at town halls and all over the media that it's time to fire Elon Musk by May 30th.
We notice you're in your car because you're in the middle of a very busy day. You earlier held a town hall in your San Antonio district. You're holding another one later today in a very deep red Texas district.
So let's be clear. There's a whole bunch of reasons to protest, right? But one of the reasons is Elon and Donnie don't want you to. And making them angry, I mean, it's kind of fun, isn't it? They don't want you protesting. They don't want you protesting because they hate civil liberty. They don't want you protesting because you're protesting them. They don't want you protesting because you're exposing their evil deeds. Because when millions of people, or thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, it will be millions by the end of his presidency, at one time or another, protesting him, not just in Washington and in big cities, but those places and everywhere else, they can't ignore it. The media can't ignore it. The Democrats, who were spurred into action after being too quiet in the first couple months, can't ignore it. Republicans can't ignore it at town halls. Can't do it. Donald Trump is realizing that when you protest, you demonstrate that, one, his policies aren't working, his policies aren't popular, he isn't popular, his mandate, which was all about lowering prices, is built on a lie for everything else. And also, it's important to realize this is his biggest fear, that you still believe you live in a democratic society. That you have not bent the knee to fascism, either because you support fascism or because you've given up resistance to it. By protesting Trump, protesting Elon, protesting Republicans, at times protesting Democrats when they go in a right-wing direction, you are demonstrating to Donald, in the best way you can, given we're outside of an election period, that this is still a democracy. And he is not your emperor. He works for you, not the other way around.